Against all odds, Hakeem Jeffries is still refusing to endorse Zoran Mamdani, who I think won the primary 12 years ago. But apparently they haven't been able to speak, and he hasn't been convinced of anything yet. And so here he is on CNBC talking about this.
You have not publicly come out endorsed him yet. And I'm curious what you're thinking.
Well, he ran a strong race in the primary, obviously, relentlessly focused on affordability, which is a big problem, of course, here in New York City, along with every other part of the United States of America. And he outworked the opposition, he outmessaged the opposition and outorganized the opposition. But now during the general election, of course, he's gonna have to demonstrate to a broader electorate, including in many of the neighborhoods that I represent in Brooklyn, that his ideas can actually be put into reality.
So the weird thing about that is he's pitching it as, I haven't endorsed him, but it's only because he hasn't convinced the voters yet. But Hakeem, we have access to polls. They're overwhelmingly supporting him. It seems like they have convinced the voters. He just hasn't convinced you, perhaps because you don't want to be convinced. And maybe it is that, as we've been talking about, it appears that for whatever reason, AIPAC money and affiliated money, they don't want Zoran Mamdani elected. And Hakeem Jeffries kind of has a dog in that fight because he's received $1.74 million from various PACs supportive of the right-wing government of Israel. You can see them listed below. That's a lot of money. It's not his only big donors that might have a dog in this fight. AIPAC is on the list of the top 5, but you have BlackRock and Apollo Global Management, Lockheed Martin, MetLife, which is behind insurance and all that. So all of those are, they represent small dollar donors, and his constituents in Brooklyn or whatever. Geez, I don't understand any politicians in America. How can they get reelected when it is so obvious how little they care about regular people? But anyway, the guy's very popular. He's already running laps around Cuomo, who I guess, by the way, since he's not willing to go against Cuomo and endorse Mamdani, I guess Cuomo has still the interest of the voters. I mean, not in the polls, but evidently there's something about Mamdani that worries Jeffries, and nothing about Cuomo. None of the corruption stuff, none of the sexual harassment stuff, none of that stuff raises to the level to be a reason to endorse Mamdani. Although I am sure that if I were to go back and look at what Hakeem Jeffries has said about Donald Trump and his various corruption and sexual harassment scandals, I'm sure he rightly centered it as a reason to oppose him as a candidate. But now, maybe he just keeps out of the fight, and maybe Cuomo cruises back into office. He seems fine with that.
Guys, you see what's happening? I mean, look, I've been doing this for 23 years on the Young Turks, 20 years online, oldest show in online history, right? And so I've got to cover these guys for most of their careers. And so when we used to say stuff like this on the Young Turks 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, like Hakeem Jeffries is an obvious sellout. Look at all of his donors. And then he had the same donors back then, right? People would have 5 years ago even, outrage. And there's no support from anything. A couple of pro-Bernie shows that were good allies. Like we held down the fort in the old days, the online left, right? But mainstream media would have canceled you to no end. In fact, they did. That's why I'm banned on all 3 cable news networks, because I say outrageous things like Hakeem Jeffries obviously works for the donors. And if you say that, you're banned on cable news. That is outrageous. And if you add AIPAC, anti-Semite, right? So like if right now, no one on cable news is allowed to say that the obvious. Hakeem Jeffries does not work for the voters. He works for the donors. I mean, are you kidding me? Lockheed Martin, Apollo Management. Remember when he went and begged Silicon Valley for money after the election? He's like, I'm sorry, we'll sell out to you as much as Donald Trump will. And then,
Cenk, to be fair, I think Lockheed Martin builds a lot of bombers in Brooklyn, actually.
That's my comment.
Okay, so and then on AIPAC and all the Israeli lab, guys, that's not just a normal, hey, we're in normal times, and even then funding Israel doesn't make sense. But okay, we could live with it, whatever it might. No, he is actively taking a massive amount of money from PACs that are not just neutral on Israel, that are in favor of the right-wing genocidal government of Israel today. And he's like, oh, you guys are right-wing religious lunatics in the middle of a genocide. Oh yeah, of course, please give me your money, give me your money. Oh yeah, Mamdani's a problem, I don't know about Mamdani. By the way, if you say, hey, I don't want to support your corporate Democrat that you put up in a race, that's an obvious loser, right? He'll be like, oh, how dare you, unity, right? What happened to unity? Okay, I was gonna add an adjective, but anyway, what happened to unity? No unity, all lies. But now, I gave you that context on history because now when we talk about it, people are like, well, it's obvious that Hakeem Jeffries is corrupt, right? Before, it was the most outrageous thing you could possibly say. Now, when cable news guys and idiot New York Times reporters and editors are like, oh, that just sounds conspiratorial, that he might be working for the donors. People look at them like they're in a zoo. Like, hey there, have you figured anything out yet? No, me like Hakeem Jeffries, me not see donors, me not see millions of dollars. What's Israel? What's corporations? I don't know anything, okay? Now they look like idiots. Those guys who used to bully us the whole time, now they're getting bullied for doing obvious marketing and propaganda for the powerful.
Yeah, I mean, they have thrown some of the most disingenuous and ridiculous attacks at Mamdani, and they've tried to make him answer for things he didn't say. We've talked about that in the past. But also on that CNBC segment, Hakeem Jeffries was asked about Mamdani and his proposals for more rent control, rent stabilization in New York. And Jeffries said that it is a legitimate issue that has been raised that Mamdani lives in a rent-controlled apartment despite not meeting the income criteria. And he's like, the Mamdani campaign is gonna have to answer for that. First of all, it's not true. He lives in a rent stabilized unit, like 40% of renters in New York. But if Hakeem Jeffries was legitimately concerned about the price of housing, housing affordability, accessibility, why is he taking money from BlackRock, the private equity firm that has been driving up the cost of housing across the country? Does he care about this, or does he just want to tank Mamdani's chances?
Yeah, and look, and on the rent stabilization, I could debate whether that's relevant or not. But what you can't debate is whether Cuomo scandals are relevant or not. And somehow,
never gets mentioned.
Hakeem Jeffries can't find the Cuomo scandals, which are gigantic and way, way larger than the tiny little, oh, I'm gonna nitpick your rent on your apartment in New York. You found that needle in a haystack, but you missed Cuomo's haystack? Come on, come on. Look, I used to say this stuff and I was a heretic and I was the outcast. Now, this is why I say I love the populist woods. Now they're the outcasts. Now the people's pretending that Hakeem Jeffries is an honest actor and a politician who's representing all the Democratic voters sound like idiots because they are. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.